So this is a beginner's guide to Total War Rome 2. We'll be playing as Rome and I'll teach you the beginning steps of this game. So, when you start as Rome, you start off with being at war with the Etruscan League. They controlled northern Italia as well as Corsica. Usually, the way I do things is I recruit the mercenary Latin spearmen, and they always start off with an army south of Velatri, so you can always just easily attack this. They don't usually they don't retreat. You can easily auto-resolve this, you won't lose many men. I personally prefer to enslave the captives, but you can also release them or kill them. Then your leader gains some experience. Sadly, this turn we cannot reach Velatri. We'll do that easily next turn. And I prefer to steal food using the spy, which grants you a little surplus. I usually send my fleet to Napoli to recruit mostly like 1 or 2 ships, as they really like to make an army here in Alalia and move it across the Mediterranean. For research, I usually do supply reforms as well as the battering ram to gain the workshop. Then, not to waste expansion, I expand this and build a temple, as Magna Graecia starts off with a significant Hellenistic population, so I usually like to convert it as quickly over as possible. For Magna Graecia, as well as Cisalpine Gaul, which is this province over here, called Cisalpina, but historically it's called Cisalpine Gaul. There I like to build a Shrine of Jupiter to gain the Pantheon, which influences from your political party, but most of the time I'll build a Shrine of Neptune because it doesn't require any food, and you'll figure out that you'll have to convert many populations. So, heading back to Italia, we built a olive settlement, so we upgrade Napoli, as well as upgrade Roma. Here I like to build the suburbia to gain a little bit more income. Now I'll tell you how this works. So, you have the jeweler, you have the amphora makers, and you have the coin makers. So, the jeweler and the coin maker increases money from industry, and they are worth more than the amphora maker. I personally don't know why you would choose the coin maker over the goldsmith, as the goldsmith makes way more money, as the public order stays negative on both sides, as well as the buff at max level is also the same. The amphora kiln maker increases wealth from commerce and agriculture, but that's more or less not usually worth it because agriculture doesn't make that much money. And when we go over to the political tree, you see that Epirus doesn't like us. That is very obvious because historically Epirus and Rome weren't the greatest of friends. Carthage also doesn't like us. However, we start with an non-aggression pact. Don't be alarmed that they'll break it early on. They will be more or less preoccupied with Syracuse and problems in Iberia. Also, Athens and Sparta are more or less indifferent about us, but they more or less do like us overall. Then you have also Syracuse. Syracuse starts off with a trade agreement. Um, Personally, I prefer to break that trade agreement off as soon as possible because the wealth isn't as big and Syracuse as a settlement is worth much more. Then we also have the Veneti to the north, which hold the eastern lands of Cisalpina. We also have Massalia, which is a Greek colony. Um, they like to trade with you, but I prefer to not make any trade with them because it will be easier to take them. We also have the RDA. They are more or less a pirate nation. Um, as you see, we have two legions, Legio II Ecetaris and Legio I Italica. I prefer to recruit some units in Legio I Italica and move them from Brundisium to Apollonia, because I like to gain a foothold in Macedonia, which is very useful when you start the Greek wars. Now you see that the Epirus has Larissa as well. Don't worry, as they start off with a war with Sparta and sooner Athens, which will be terrible because they'll border two enemies, because Sparta can cross over here and Athens can go via the more mountainous route. And you'll see that they lose to Larissa very early on and they aren't really a big threat. Then we also have here we have Iader from the Dalmatian tribe, which is technically not discovered even though we see it, which is weird, but okay. Also, one of the reasons that Carthage doesn't like us is because they view us as a threat, and historically Carthage wasn't the greatest friends with Rome, but I wouldn't worry about it. So this is basically the map. We have various political parties. I prefer to be the House of Julia because it helps with the integration, as well as has a buff against the attack against barbarian tribes. Now you'll see that it doesn't look really like the vanilla game, which is true because I run with the mods, which I will list in the description, so that you can get them on the Steam Workshop. These mods basically increase the chances to get children, and that the children live longer. They make cities look much more lively, much more colorful. As well as I run a mod pack that increases the unit size, because in my mind 120 men is way too little, and you know, bigger armies lead to way cooler battles, and you'll see that, I hope. So I recommend those mods. I also recommend the mod that makes fighting animations much more brutal, which you'll be able to see in the videos. I will teach you how to play Rome. We'll go through the campaign together, and I'll give you some tips, maybe what you can improve, and if you have any questions you can put them down in the comments and I'll try to answer them as best I can. Going over to the units, you'll see that we have a lot of these infantry. They are known as a hastati. They are the young men of Rome who are very determined to prove their worth. We also have the velites. They are basically the better version of the levies, so if you have the option You can recruit Velites, but it doesn't make that big of a difference. As you see in stats, the Velites have slightly more missile damage, as well as they have more missile shots per minute. They also have slightly better melee attack and bigger base morale, but doesn't really matter. Now, I'll tell you which units I would recruit early on. I would never ever take the Rari. Although they are cheap, they are very, very terrible. If you look at the melee attack, it is 22 melee attack less, as well as 10 weapon damage less than the Hastati. Also, they don't have, maybe have a bonus against cavalry, but still, you'll find that the AI doesn't really prefer to attack you with its cavalry against your infantry, and prefers to flank around, which might be annoying, but you can easily use that to your advantage, which I will teach you later on. Then we go over to our finances. You see that we have a tax level, we have our income, and then we have our expenditures. We have trade, and we have the summary. This is basically used to increase your income or decrease your income, which gives you more happiness. I prefer to do it on normal taxes because it's better for the public order. But if you want, you can do high taxes early on for like 2 turns to gain more money, which I usually like to do. And then you can turn off to normal, and then the public order will start to increase. We we can also untax the province, which of course leads to less money gain, but it would make people much happier, which I recommend you do in newly conquered lands. It will make them happier much faster, and when you capture a place, it usually doesn't bring up that much money, so it's better to just turn off taxes. Then you also see that I have these weird little things, and I also run a mod called Wonders of the Ancient World, and Mount Vesuvius is one of them. As you see, it increases morale and wealth from agriculture. There is Mount Etna, I believe, yes. No. There's one in Syracuse, there's one in Sparta, there's one in Larissa, there's one in Pulpediva, there's one in... I'm not even going to try and pronounce that because that would be terrible. There's various ones over here, including the beautiful gardens of Babylon. There's one in Alexandria, there's one in Libya, there's one in Baetica, there's one in Celtica, one in Britannia, and that would be about it. I recommend you try and capture as many of them because, as you see, they give nice buffs. They give buffs to income, morale, speed, the sight of various armies and fleets. And I think that is about it. Here you can see the factions that you already know. You can see the relationship status with it. The gray one is that you can trade with them, and it also says that the value that it will provide. As you see the status if you're at war. Green means that you are already trading, and red means that trade with that faction is impossible. Maybe because they have no port, or then you need land connection, or that you have no port, and they have no land connection to you. And you see that most of these factions are neutral to you. Here you have your provinces and the provinces that you know of. Here you can see which one is the wealthiest. Italia is a very wealthy province, very wealthy. Usually in the end game it's worth about 8,000 denarii per turn, which is a nice sum. Here we have here you have your forces. They are also visible on the map. Here you see your agents, your armies, and your fleets. Here are the messages that you get for that turn. Then going over to here, you have the objectives. There are 3 types of objectives. You have chapter objectives, which is to usually the first one is that you withhold the entirety of the province of your capital. And then you have also these secondaries, which here you need to control Magna Graecia and Italia, which will net you 1,000. Then you have Etruscan Decline, which you have to go to destroy or subjugate the entirety of the Etruscan faction. And here you have the Punic Wars. The Punic Wars is a reference to the Punic Wars, which were the wars between Rome and Carthage. And here you have active missions, which are missions that you have a standard amount of time to complete, and they will net you small short-term buffs. And here you have the ultimate objectives to complete your campaign. So you can either have a military victory, which is more or less the easiest way to end a campaign. You have an economic victory. Then you also have a cultural victory. As you see, in all of them you need to control Italia, which is of course the region where Rome is situated. And you can also recruit agents. Agents are very useful to scout out enemy lands and to provide buffs. Now you can also see in the you have politics. Here you have the records, so everything that happened over the entirety of your campaign, you can find it all here. Then you have the characters of your family. You also have other families, the House of Cornelia, the House of Junia, and the House of Papiria. You can also hire politicians, which I don't prefer to do, because it just gives more power to them, and if they will be really unhappy with you, so everything below -10 will give you a risk of a civil war. Civil war works usually the same way. If you go to the strategic overview, you have political parties. So, the House of Julia controls this part of Italia. The House of Cornelia holds this area, and when they will secede, they will spawn an army, and you'll lose this province, which is very logical. Then you have faction ownership, you have diplomatic status. The Etruscan League is our enemy, so it is shown in red. Then you have public order, region wealth, and region growth. Don't be alarmed when in the late game you have no region growth. That's because all the settlements are expanded to maximum. As you see, Roma is the wealthiest here, followed by Brundisium, but Roma will usually be the most wealthy and most developed city that you'll have. And then you also see party traits, like for example the House of Cornelia hates Greeks, so the better relationships you have with the Greeks, with the Easterners, they will really dislike that. which will of course turn down in their loyalty. Um, they don't really like anyone, and they don't like you getting too powerful. Then you have the House of Junia. They are the most friendly to you because they only have positive traits like agriculturist, traditionalist, and subversive. You see that they don't control any regions. Um, they have a massive influence, but undoubtedly the House of Papria has the biggest influence, 32% and 161 senators. Um, Leaders and characters also have their own traits, like militarist, thirst for power, subversive, and militarist. Then you have the summary. So, this is basically the details of your nation. I'll explain them as simply as I can. So, this shows your faction and your leader. This is a culture of your nation, the capital of your nation, which is Roma. The regions owned, which in our case is 4. The provinces owned is 0, because none of our provinces are truly united. Then we have our treasury, which is, as you see, very low, but you have to spend money to make money. Our prosperity is moderate. And then you have the traits of our basically ruler. So Rome, which allows you to have more legions as well as a larger movement rate. Then you have the influence of your character, which is overlooked, which means that he isn't hated, but he isn't adored. The house, which shows its buffs. The status of your nation, which is the republic. We also have the empire. And our imperium level. The imperium level works like this. The more settlements you have, the higher your imperium is. The higher your imperium is, the more armies, the more fleets, the more spies, the more edicts you have, and also, which is a huge debuff, the higher your imperium is, you will have less, way less loyalty, and you'll have more corruption. Here you see your diplomacy, and we'll go to the next turn in the next video. Thank you for watching.